Sam, still here at EGX 2021 on the show floor for bloody brilliant games. We popped over to the PQube booth to have a look at what games they were showing there, and Priv, one of the community managers, was very kind enough to give us a bit of his time. So in terms of, we'll start with Dive to Sunset, if that's all right. What kind of feedback have you had from the players in terms of, how they're finding it? Because, of course, you as a publisher, you've obviously been given it, bought it from the developers. And what are the public thoughts so far here at EGX?
So the feedback's been absolutely amazing. Like, everyone does like the aesthetic of the cartoon element, and it has got similarities to other games in that aspect, so it's very familiar to them. As well as the roguelike element to it, where you've got Hades, Risk of Rain, which is super popular. So everyone likes the sort of concept of the game for sure. And then when they're sitting down playing it, whether it's on controller or keyboard and mouse, because right now it's not launched, but it'll be coming as early access soon. We have not announced it, but hopefully we can. But the fact that they have the option to play on keyboard and mouse or controller, they're absolutely loving it. They're just jumping in, just enjoying themselves.
And in terms of the games you've got here, if we look at kind of the games that are taking up the most space, I think it's fair to say, those are all games that have come out fairly recently.
Yes.
From your side, was it a case of, events like EGX are an absolute blessing because they give you a chance to, get these games in front of more people who may not have seen them on, for example, a Steam store page?
Yeah, so to be honest, for PQube ourselves, we haven't been at an event in over 19 months.
Oh, wow.
So it's not something like, and all of these games have come out during the pandemic. So one of the strategies that we haven't been able to do are events. So the fact that EGX have been absolutely amazing, tried to get the green light to go ahead as quick as they possibly can, and then we're able to set up at the same time, we're able to at least get direct feedback from everyone, whereas we would always have to depend on like comments or feedback through beta testing and play tests that Steam's doing, which is good. You can reach a lot of people, but myself as a community manager, I like being able to interact with the community directly, understand what they like, what their preferences are, and finding out what the common issues that they might have or the common likes. So this way we know how to continue marketing the games, because the developers put so much passion, put so much of their time into the game, and you can tell how much they invest into the game as well. We want to do the best we possibly can to market it and get it out there so people can see it and see how great the games are.
And I wanted to ask, in terms of course, this being the first pretty much public game show back since the pandemic, how have you guys found it? There's a lot of people obviously surrounding your booth. Has it been kind of almost like a net gain, given the fact that we've got no Microsoft, we've got no Sony, got no Nintendo? More people are focusing on this end of the show floor. How have you found that in terms of really kind of controlling the numbers of people looking at the games and such?
Well, with EGX, they did the best they possibly can, and it's been absolutely fantastic, especially for the indie games. But like, as for me, as a person who loves games and grew up with video games, it's a shame that we can't see the big titles and people aren't able to queue up to play all of these amazing games coming out. But at the same time, this is the perfect moment for indie developers to showcase their games, because there's such a diversity of games, especially for PQube alone. We have such a diversity of games alone. And then we've got the res section in EGX, where everyone is able to like kind of hang out and enjoy way more, rather than having to wait in booths for 50-55 minutes. They're able to come down, just play, and then we get more interaction. So it's been super positive for all independent developers and independent publishers.
Here at Bloody Brilliant Games, we like to ask the hard-hitting questions, so I'm going to put you on the spot. Which of the games you've got on show is your favourite?
Ooh, that's a cheeky question. That's a very cheeky question. It depends, because I like my variety of games, so I don't necessarily have a particular preference. I myself like JRPGs. I do like long-winded games purely because I like to invest so much time into it, because I'm able to invest in characters and everything like that. But joining PQube and seeing the diversity of games that we have, it's very difficult to put it down, because we've got Guitar Fables, where you've got a really cutesy, wholesome game where it's action-adventure, again similar to like Cat Quest 2. It's a good start to anyone who has not played like action RPG, even adventure. So it's good to kind of get into it, and they're both multiplayer, so you can play with someone else. So it has that element to it. But then you've got Dive to Sunset, which is super action-packed. There's a PvE element, so you can have fun with the campaigns, the events, and like different ways of kind of getting around and kind of progressing since it's a roguelite. And then you have Plane Effect, which is super cinematic, purely puzzle-based, which I love. So growing up, puzzle games was huge for me. So being able to invest time to characters, and then having that element to it, especially because the developers are ex-visual effects developers. Basically, it's just there's so many good parts to all of the games. It's so difficult to even say which one can be my favourite. But one of the ones that I really enjoyed for sure and can play again, replayability-wise, I love is probably Tormented Souls, because I love horror games. I love horror games and I will watch horror movies, but I'm not great with handling the scares and like the creepy environment and atmosphere. But I just love how that has come into fruition from when we started. So I would say, as working on it, that one grabbed my attention the most, but I absolutely love every single game that we have on the stand right now.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
So thank you very much to Priv for giving us some of his time. Very busy man, I assume, at this EGX. The only real game, as we mentioned in that interview, that was actually new for PQube was Die After Sunset. Die After Sunset is a really interesting little title. Stylistically, it takes seemingly a lot of cues from Fortnite. A lot of similar kind of character designs. Enemies not so much, they're kind of a nice original thing, but the overall kind of cartoony drawn aesthetic is similar to Fortnite. There were a few issues we personally had in the gameplay. First of all, I think we should talk about the shooting. So the shooting, the aiming is a tad rough. You do have options here at EGX to play it on either console or on a controller. Stupidly, we thought, let's try the controller, and yet it was not quite as good as obviously it will be on the PC. Enemy spawning very, very quickly. Gives you no time to really rest and consider your options in the middle of a firefight. And on top of that, combining that with a lack of, seemingly anyway, health pickups, it can make firefights more tense than perhaps they should be. That said, you do have armor and health that regenerates, but having pickups to aid that could be a nice little addition. PQube are a really interesting developer, because as we said in that interview, Die After Sunset is the only new game they've got here. All the others have been out in the last month, so they're kind of using this to get a bit more exposure onto those titles. With that said, PQube have always been an interesting publisher because they produce a lot of very interesting, unique types of titles with unique themings. So Die After Sunset is definitely something that may be worth a look in a few months' time.